Hi everyone, welcome to VCL TV. My name is Ernest. Today we want to discuss Lexis and Structure. Let's first of all look at the meaning of the word Lexis and then structure. Structure. Lexis means word. While structure means usage. So that we can say Lexis and structure. Lexis and structure simply refers of things like words and usage. Words and usage. That's all. That's the simple definition of Lexis and structure. Now I want to look at the aspects of Lexis and structure. So we can group all of the first 6 aspects under the aspect of Lexis, that is syntax. Then we can now talk about structure as the structure. So you can see it, Lexis and structure. You have the first 6 belonging to Lexis, and then the last aspect falling under the aspect of structure. Let's take the first aspect, which is semantics. What is the meaning of semantics? So when we say things like about semantics, we're simply talking about meaning and interpretation. Meaning and interpretation of words. That's semantics. There are 3 types of semantics. 3. You have what we call formal semantics, formal semantics, and then you have lexical semantics, formal semantics, lexical semantics, and then you have conceptual semantics. Now, let's take the first one, formal semantics. Under formal semantics, what are we talking about here? Formal semantics involves the use of logic and philosophy. That is, using the principle of logic and philosophy to interpret expressions. Logic and philosophy. Alright? Now, how does this work? Based on the principle of logic, we talk about inferences. If I say things like, if A is B and if A is B and B is C, then if A is what? B and B is C, then A is C. This kind of understanding, or using this approach to understand the meaning of expression, is categorized under formal semantics. Now let's talk about things like, I decided to say, all boys are good. All boys are good. Then I say, John is a boy. All boys are good. John is a boy. Then John is good. This kind of understanding is formal semantics. Now let's move on to the next example of semantics, lexical semantics. Lexical semantics. This aspect of semantics looks at the meaning of words and expression from the perspective of context. That is the contextual usage. And here we remember the slogan that the word has no meaning except in its context. Now, the elements that come into play here include all things like idioms, figures of speech, all things like idioms, figures of speech, all things like proverbs, and all things like maxims and truism. Maxim and truism are considered here. Then the next one is conceptual semantics. Under this aspect of semantics, we interpret words based on two principles. And the first principle is the principle of connotation, and denotation. Principle of connotation and denotation. What is denotation? Denotation means the dictionary meaning of a word. That's denotation. Dictionary meaning. That is denotation. Then what about connotation? Connotation means things like sentimental meaning, or like you say literary meaning. So when you talk about what a word means ordinarily is denotation. Then when you now talk about what that word is going to mean by attaching feelings and sentiments to it, they're talking about connotation. Now, words can fall into these two categories in English. For example, let's say things like different. If you use the word different. You can use this for denotative interpretation or expressions. That is to mean that something stands out. But when you now want to look for the connotative implication of different, you use words like unique. You can say that when people are writing birthday messages and love letters, they will not say things like you are different. They will say you are unique. The second aspect of Lexis and Structure is synonyms. Very simple. Nearest in meaning. It's as simple as that. Words like start. If I say start, I can say begin. If I say things like group, I can say gang. Or I can say things like click. The third aspect of Lexis and Structure is antonyms. Antonyms. Here we're talking about different in meaning. Words that are different in meaning. It's as simple as that. Words that are different. It's like start, stop. Start, stop. Good. You can have things like on, off. You can have things like black and then white. So these are words that are different in meaning. The next aspect of Lexis and Structure is homonyms. This word has two important parts, and the most important here is homo, which means same. In other words, we can say that homonyms can be divided into homophones, and then homographs. Homophones and homographs. Then when we use the word homophones, what are we talking about? Like we have said that homo means same, so here we can say same, and then the phone means sound. Two words that have same sound, same what? Sound, but different meanings. same sound but different meanings. Same sound but different meanings, right? So that is what we mean by homophones. What are the examples of homophones that we have in English? You can have examples like, if I take something like two, okay? Two and two. Then these three words have the same sound and their phonetics is T, O, that is two. They have the same sound but different meanings. Then another good example of homophone, we can call this example one, of homophones in English is the words like son and son. And their phonetic is S, R, and N. That is son. Then another very good example of homophones in English can be words like rose and rose. Rose and rose. And here you're going to have rose. That's rose. Then finally, let's take a fourth example of homophones in English. You can have one, a past tense of winning, and then you have one that is single. And their phonetics will be we and then the L sound and ni. So these words have the same sound but different meanings. Then the next aspect we want to talk about under the homonyms is what we call the homographs. Homographs, just like homophones, homographs are two words that have the same graph, has a root in Greek and it is graphe. It means to write. So same spelling. Okay, same spelling. So homographs are two words that have the same spelling but different meanings. Same spelling but different meanings. And their pronunciation may be different as well. Examples of the homographs will be things like second, and then you have second, second position and second time, that is the third hand of the clock, that's second. Then you can have another case like convert, to change, convert, that is the noun. This is a verb and this is a noun. They are homographs. You can have minute and then you have minute. Minute, minute. Minute, it is small. Minute, that is the second hand of the clock. The fifth aspect of Lexis and Structure is Policemen. Policemen. Poly, again here, means many. Poly means many. And semi also has its root in meanings. So we say one word with several meanings. With several meanings. That is Policemen. One word with several meanings. For example, if I give you a word like properties, property, and then you can also have property. What does property mean here? This can stand for the attribute. We can use this to stand for what? Attribute. And then you can also use the word property to stand for belongings. Belongings. So we say that property is, the word property is a polysemous word. Then another very good example of polysemy is does. Does. Does and does. Does can be used as a primary auxiliary verb. Primary auxiliary verb, and does yes, that is a very good example of polysemy. The sixth aspect of Lexis and Structure is collocation. English is all about collocations. That is, we're talking about when you're studying words, you need to know how these words are arranged and how they are brought together. So under this aspect of Lexis and Structure, although we have so many examples of collocation, cases of collocations in English, but for the purpose of this overview, we want to look at 3 examples of collocations. And these examples will be things like now under the adjective noun collocation, whenever you use a particular noun in English, there is the appropriate adjective that should go with it. The amount, for example, will you expect me to use things like big amount or large amount? So which one will go here? So the correct one will be what? Large. So you say large amount, not big amount. Right. What about things like if I use something like proportion? If I use proportion, proportion is a noun. Proportion. Now, will you expect me to use big proportion or large proportion? Then I'm going to say large would be better considered with proportion. So that's adjective noun to verb adjective, or rather verb adverb collocation. When you use a verb in English, it has the most likely words that can be used with it, or adverbs rather, that must go with it. Let's say sing. Sing is a verb, and then what adverb is going to go with sing? Can I say he sang? He sang beautifully. I can say he sang beautifully. And then you can have something like attractively, okay? Attractively. So now, if you have this, which one am I going to take here? Is it better for us to say he sang beautifully or he sang attractively? So the best one to consider here will become what? Beautifully. So I can write that as, because the action has been performed, so it has to be in the past. I'll say he sang beautifully. He sang beautifully. So that is a case of verb adverb collocation. Then what about a case of verb preposition? This one can be in 2 ways. You can have phrasal verbs, and then you can have verb collocation. Phrasal verb and verb collocation. Yes, when a verb is used with preposition, it can appear as ordinary collocation, and then or it appears what? As a phrasal verb. Now, one thing that we must know here is that all phrasal verbs are collocation. All verbs are collocation, but not all collocations are phrasal verbs. Now let's look at examples, some examples of phrasal verbs and examples of verb collocation. In the area of verb and preposition, it is, or rather, a verb and preposition collocation is going to be a phrasal verb if the preposition changes the meaning of the verb. Let's say take. When I use a preposition like after, or I give you a word like take and I use a preposition like in, then I give you another verb again, I use a preposition like on. Take after, to resemble. Take after means to resemble, so this is a phrasal verb. Then when I say take in, this one means to conceive. Then it's a phrasal verb because the preposition has changed the meaning of the verb differently from what happened in the first case. Then take on means to what? To confront or to attack, if you like. So on has again changed the meaning of take from conception towards attack. So because the preposition has successfully changed the meaning of the verb in each of these cases, then all of the cases are phrasal verbs. But when do we have verb preposition that is playing out as a mere collocation and not a phrasal verb? If I give you a thing like disappointed, if I say disappointed in or disappointed on, okay, let's say disappointed at. So whatever preposition you consider here to go with disappointed is a mere case of verb collocation, and you can say disappointed in and disappointed at, that both are correct. What about believes in? Believes, if I say things like believes, believes in and believes on. I believe in God, I believe on God. No, we can say things like I believe on, we can say things like I believe in. So this case of verb and preposition is a mere verb collocation and not a phrasal verb. So that is that about collocations in Lexis and Structure. And then the final aspect we want to discuss today is structure. Structure. This aspect of Lexis and Structure talks about the usage of words. Remember we said Lexis and Structure is words and usage. So all of what we'll be discussing from 1 to 6 falls into Lexis, that is syntax. But now we're not talking about usage, that is the way words are used in expressions. Structure begins rather with phrases. What is a phrase? Understanding of what a phrase means, and then the understanding of what a clause is, then the understanding of the sentence. Yes, this is where it starts from. So on the phrase, you're going to have an expression like early in the morning, early in the morning. Okay, we're not trying to, let's say early in the morning, then this is a phrase because there's no verb in these expressions. Now, when we're talking about clauses, we're talking about group of words, any group of words that has a lexical verb. If I say standing in the garden, standing in the garden. So standing in the garden will become a clause because there is a verb here, standing. Then if I say something like left in the morning, left early 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 in the morning. So these are examples of clauses. Now what's the difference between phrase, clause, and sentence? A phrase does not have a verb, a clause has a verb, and a sentence now is the third aspect. Okay, now we can differentiate between clause and phrase. A clause conveys ideas or it makes sense. It's a group of expressions or group of words that make sense, but they do not make complete sense. Whereas a sentence makes complete sense. So for us to convert these clauses to sentences now, we can say, he is standing in the garden. And then we can say, she left early in the morning. So when you say she left early in the morning, this is now a complete word sense. When you say he is standing in the garden, then that makes a complete sense as well. So this is the difference between phrase, clause, and the sentence. Structure goes beyond that to talk about the types of sentences, types of what? The sentence. Then to talk about as well the function and structure. The function and then structure. The function and structure. Other types of sentences, you can have question, exclamation, and then statement. Then other function as well, you can still classify sentences based on what you are using them to do in your expressions. So you can still use them as questions, as exclamation, or so on and so forth. Then structure, we're going to talk about the structure of sentences. The structure of sentences. So here you can have things like under types of sentences, you can have tag, you can have reported speech, that is direct and indirect speech, and so on and so forth. Reported speech. Another structure of sentences, we can now talk about the lexical analysis. That is analysis. The lexical analysis of a sentence. The lexical analysis of what? The sentence. The lexical analysis of the sentence, the SVOAC will come out here. We want to know what is the subject, the verb, the object, the adjunct, and the complement. So these are all the things that we consider under structure in Lexis and Structure. So that's what I have for you today. Please, if you have found this video helpful, try to share with friends, and kindly remember to subscribe and click like. See you in our next lesson.